Hi, I am deep in the reads, and today I'm doing something a little bit different from my usual book review shtick, and I'll be answering these 8 simple questions. Because you see, I have friends on BookTube, which is surprising, I know, and one of those friends is Literally Books, who does reviews on genre fiction and literary fiction and all kinds of tags. You should definitely check him out. And he tagged me in the favorite people tag, which is something that was started by Books, Songs, and Other Magic. It's basically a tag going over favorite people of different categories and who you look up to and stuff like that. So we're gonna get into that today and hopefully have a nice, simple, easy video. So without any further ado, let's get into the questions. Question 1. Name your favorite author. Oh my god, this is gonna be a rough video, isn't it? I don't have a favorite author. I don't even like authors. Have you seen my videos? I rate everything 6 out of 10. They should call me deep in the 6 out of 10s. But more seriously though, I used to have favorite authors. The problem is I get to know them too well. Like, I would have said John Steinbeck for years because he wrote East of Eden and Grapes of Wrath, which are 2 of my all-time favorite novels. But then as I read more and more, I realized he has duds just like everyone else. And then Stephen King. I used to be more addicted to Stephen King than Stephen King was addicted to cocaine, okay? Like, he was literally all I read in junior high and high school. But then I read a string of his worst books, like all in a row, by accident, right as Under the Dome was coming out. And if you haven't read Under the Dome, it has the most embarrassingly awful, stupid ending I have ever read in anything, and a lot of people agree with me on that one. I basically quit Stephen King cold turkey after that. So, currently, the position of my favorite author is unoccupied. And the problem is, I'm not sure that it's going to be filled anytime soon, because I tend to read for variety. For example, this year, I only plan on reading 1 book by an author that I've tried before. Every other book I have planned is by an author I've never tried before. And even when I find a book that I really love, it usually takes me like years before I circle back and try something else by that author. So unfortunately, I think I won't have a solid favorite author for a long time to come. Question 2. Name your favorite comedy actor or comedian. I find there's a tendency with stand-up comedians to kind of fall off after making a few really good specials. The only exception to that, for me, is George Carlin, where he started off kind of shaky, and then it wasn't until maybe like the 70s, 80s that he started getting his stride, and then his stuff in the 90s is like really peak, and even his really late stuff is still good. So I know it's a pretty basic answer for stand-up comedians, but I guess George Carlin is my favorite. Question 3. Name your favorite dramatic actor or actress. Once again, I don't have a solid answer for this. I don't know why I decided to make this tag video, but I don't really care that much about who is cast in the movies I'm watching, as long as they're cast well or placed well or whatever. Like, look, if a good director and writer and producer know how to use an actor's particular talents really well, so like, Arnold Schwarzenegger is a terrible actor, right? But he works really well in the Terminator movies, like he was made to be the Terminator. So I really, I guess, just have some random favorite performances that I can list off for you as examples of what I like. So, Daniel Day-Lewis in There Will Be Blood, Marie Falconetti in The Passion of Joan of Arc, James Gandolfini in The Sopranos, Gina Rowlands in A Woman Under the Influence, Peter Sellers in Dr. Strangelove. You know, there's a few of my favorite performances for you. Question 4. Name your favorite film director. For some reason this tag is just full of questions about movies, which is a little weird because I'm supposed to be a booktuber over here. But fear not, I used to be absolutely obsessed with movies, and I know this is the most basic film bro answer I could possibly give, but my favorite director is Stanley Kubrick. And I've loved him since I was a teenager, but even as I've gotten a lot more discerning and critical with my tastes, his films have absolutely stood up for me. Like, he's made 13 movies in his career. One of them sucked, and it was his first movie, when he was completely amateur, all that stuff. But his learning curve was so fast. Like, by the time he's making Paths of Glory, just a few years after he started, he's making movies that most directors would give their right arm to have made in their entire career. And then he moves into this incredible period from Space Odyssey all the way to his last movie, Eyes Wide Shut, where he's just knocking out masterpiece after masterpiece. Everything he makes, I just love it. His favorite movies of mine are A Space Odyssey, Clockwork Orange, and from his early career, I would say Paths of Glory, or maybe Doctor Strangelove. Yeah, just an incredible movie maker. And the thing is, I get it. His films are very slow-paced. The acting is very subdued. But what I really like about his movies are the atmosphere and the deeper themes. Like, I know this is so pretentious to say, but there's this film critic named Rob Ager who wrote this series of essays and did a lot of videos sort of picking apart and analyzing films, and he did a huge series on Kubrick films, and that just opened my mind to just how much interesting stuff and subtlety that an auteur filmmaker can pack into their movies to give it depth. And then there's all of this deeper social critique and political commentary in almost all of his movies. And as you start to realize how he embeds deeper meanings into his movies, it expanded my view of what media can do artistically, what it can say. So I've never been able to look at any media the same way since I learned how to pick apart Kubrick's films and analyze them. It's something that carries through how I read books, how I listen to music. It's just really influenced my life. And, you know, just to show that I'm not completely tunnel vision on Kubrick, here's a list of a few of my other favorite film directors that are definitely worth checking out as well. Question 5. Name your favorite political figure from the past or present. Have you ever heard that saying that the best players are on the bench? I think politics is a lot like that, because you can fantasize about what someone will be like once they come to power, but once they actually get that power, their flaws are thrown into very sharp relief. That leaves me with idolizing people who didn't get political power, or in some cases didn't even want it. So my answer for this question is Martin Luther King Jr. And before you think I'm another guy who only knows about the I Have a Dream speech, let me tell you, I have read so many biographies on the guy, 3 of which were over 1,000 pages each. I know a lot about his policies and his politics and how they progressed over time, how radical he was at times, his fight for reparations and a universal basic income and fair housing after he had already won all of these civil rights victories. Just show how much of his dream is left to be achieved. A lot of people like to pretend that once Martin Luther King rolled through, he fixed racism forever, but this is still a very active issue. Racial injustice is still going on. So I think I owe it to myself to kind of move forward from the civil rights era of the 50s and 70s and get into the modern fight for racial justice. But I always go back to Martin Luther King because I just love his strategizing and the way that he was able to sort of find himself in the center between not only the political mainstream and radical activists, but also between various camps of activists in his own circles. The NAACP was a little bit more conservative, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee was a little bit more radical than Martin Luther King was, but he knew how to balance them out, and he also knew how to play to the system because he understood how necessary that was to pass legislation. So he didn't mind getting in dirty with politicians when he had to. He didn't mind doing like the cynical fundraising stuff, but he could also pivot and do things like calling out the war against Vietnam or talking about colonialism and how America plays into colonialism all across the globe. He, like right before he got assassinated, he was planning a second March on Washington, which was all about economic disparity, wealth inequality, and poverty in the United States. So he was always thinking, he was always progressing, and when things went wrong for him, like for example during the Albany protests, he was able to go to the drawing board and admit his mistakes in order to triangulate his strategy and come back stronger than ever before. There's so much to admire about the guy. He's really worth looking into. And if you want to go a little bit deeper than his I Have a Dream speech, please look up the Letter from Birmingham Jail. Just look it up. It's not a long read. It's incredible writing. So yeah, Martin Luther King is kind of a stereotypical choice. He's unfortunately quite whitewashed today. So I guess you owe it to yourself. Look into Martin Luther King seriously. Like, do a deep dive on the guy. You'll be really impressed with what you find. Question 6. Name your favorite new discovery. At first I thought this question was supposed to be about like my favorite new scientific discovery or something like that. But I saw a bunch of people do this tag and realized that this is supposed to be about what my favorite discovery in music or movies or books is. So for that, I guess I can talk about music here. I went to South America a few months ago, and all surrounding that trip, I got really into South American music. Bossa nova, samba, cumbia, and all this types of folk music. So I really enjoy a lot of it, but more recently I've been listening to specifically Peruvian and Bolivian stuff, since that's where I was. So for bands, I would say El Polen is really good. They put out a couple albums in the 70s and then did a reunion just a few years ago and put out another album. And all of their stuff is really great. I'll link some of it below. Definitely worth checking out. And then my favorite individual musician from the area that I found was Luzmila Carpio, who is a Bolivian alto folk singer, and it's her early stuff that I really like. Her more recent stuff I'm not as interested in, but the stuff she was doing, again, in the 70s, 80s, is right up my alley. It took a little bit of getting used to because her voice is so high-pitched that you're like, what the hell is this? But it grew on me, and now I just love her voice. And then, speaking of weird voices, I also got into a Mongolian throat singing band called Egg Shiglin, and holy crap, their music just takes you to another world. All the hairs on the back of my neck stand up, and I just fall in love with this huge, luscious, atmospheric, epic music from a country that I know almost nothing about. So when it comes to music, I'm always on the lookout for the unusual and the unknown, and stuff from countries that I don't really know much about. I found this list online of a guy goes to each country and lists what his favorite album is from every single country in the world. And I've been making my way through that list, and I'll link it below as well, I guess. And almost every album I find is just awesome, and I'm like, oh man, I want to know more about this musician. So yeah, that's a little bit of what I've been listening to lately. Question 7. Name your favorite musician, singer, or band. I'm more of a favorite albums kind of person than a favorite bands kind of person. I listen to all kinds of music, my tastes are mostly rooted in extreme forms of metal, like death metal and black metal, but I'm really all over the place with this, I'm into pop music, I'm into hip-hop, I'm into jazz, orchestral music. I think my favorite band overall is Swans. And part of that is because they've dabbled in so many genres since they were formed in the 80s. They formed as a no-wave band, which is this offshoot of hardcore extreme punk music and noise rock kind of. But they've been through so many iterations. They've done folk, they've done country, they've done gothic music, they've done glitch, they've done drone, and they've managed to slowly tie all of these dabblings together into a very cohesive sound that's very multi-instrumental, multi-sensory, just soundscapes they can go from blissful and beautiful and soaring to absolutely crushing and heavy and nihilistic. And then they also have more straightforward rock and metal songs too, and some of their songs are 3 minutes with the verse, chorus, verse kind of thing, and then other songs by them are 45 minutes long. The Knot is one of my favorite songs of theirs, and it's nearly an hour. So there's just so much to talk about with this band. My favorite album by them is probably The Seer, but I also really like The Great Annihilator, Soundtracks for the Blind, and The Glowing Man. If you haven't heard of them, please listen to something of theirs, even if it's an hour long. Question 8. Name your biggest inspirational person. I've already named a few people I really admire, but to add another name, I'm gonna say Carl Sagan. I really love his mission to demystify science and take it out of the stuffy academic classroom and make it understandable while still injecting it with the sense of wonder and magic that really brings the world around you to life. I enjoy his idea of like finding harmful misinformation, disinformation, all this other stuff and debunking it, but in a way that doesn't ever feel arrogant. He's not like Hitchens or Dawkins or anyone like that. He's a lot more friendly and approachable. He's a lot more interested in showing you that while science is the best tool we have for understanding the world around us, it is not complete and it's not perfect. It's constantly needing correction. It constantly needs to face up to scrutiny and the scientific method in order to dispel issues in what its conclusions are, so it's constantly refining itself. And at the same time, he's also aware that science is just a tool, and in the hands of humans, any tool can be used for good or for bad. So he's always aware of how bad science can be used, so he's always advocating for an ethical and egalitarian application of science that benefits everybody and not just a select chosen few. I really like his, his worldview, his message, the way he writes. Like his nonfiction book, A Demon Haunted World, is one of my favorite nonfiction books ever. Super high recommend, 10 out of 10. I can't praise it enough. I really like Carl Sagan. And I should definitely look into reading some of his fiction, too, because I haven't read any of it. So one of these days I'm going to get around to reading Cosmos, and when I do, I'll be sure to talk about it on here. The final task of this tag is to tag some other people, and I'm going to tag 2 people. First one is Frosty Knives. He does a channel that used to focus a lot on horror, a lot on Stephen King, but recently he's taken to reviewing every single expanded universe Star Wars novel chronologically from like before the Disney movies started coming out, and it's been pretty interesting to follow. And then the other person I want to tag is Kylie over at Way Overbooked. It's been a while since she's been actively making content, but I've been friends with her for years now, so I figure I need to cash in on that and get her to do a tag, maybe. So those are the 2 people I'm tagging. I'm linking their channels below, and I guess we're done. I guess I've come to the end of this tag that I've been assigned to do. So, literally books. I've done what I've been tasked with, and so, that other one that you tagged me in, I don't know if I'm going to do that, but I appreciate the thought. And I really appreciate getting tagged in this video. It's always fun to do a tag every once in a while, so yeah. That's it for now. Next time you see me, I'll be back with another book review, but in the meantime, you might want to like, comment, subscribe. I don't know if you're feeling generous. But yeah, I'm done. Bye.